Okay, let's talk about the tools that are quietly sitting in maker studios, cutting their production time in half. Not the glamorous machines, the specific, less talked about tools that most crafters only discover after years of doing things the hard way. 30 of them. Let's go. Tool number one, the Olfa rotating cutting mat. You probably have a regular cutting mat. What you might not have is the rotating version. The Olfa rotating rotary mat, the 17-inch square model, has a spinning top layer that lets you rotate your fabric or paper mid-cut without picking it up, repositioning it, or walking around your table. If you quilt, if you cut fabric for any kind of sewing project, or if you're doing precision paperwork, this thing is genuinely transformative. Olfa verified through independent testing that their blades cut up to 470 more yards of fabric when used with an Olfa self-healing mat versus without, meaning the mat protects your blade, not just your table. And the rotating version adds speed on top of that. Instead of moving yourself around the material, you spin the mat. You save time and your cuts get more accurate because you're always cutting at your most natural angle. Tool number two. Thread snips, not scissors. This sounds so small that you might be tempted to skip past it. Don't. Thread snips are spring-loaded, single-action scissors with no handle rings. You just squeeze and release. And they are the single most frequently used tool in a sewing or embroidery studio because you're cutting thread constantly, all day. And doing that with full-size scissors takes proportionately much more hand energy and time. Sewists who switch to thread snips for all their thread trimming report that their hands are significantly less fatigued at the end of a long production session. You can hang them around your wrist or attach them to your machine. They're right there every time you need them. The trim that took 3 seconds with scissors takes 1 second with snips. Multiply that by the number of times you cut thread in an 8-hour session, and you're talking about genuine cumulative time savings. Tool number three. Wonder clips, and why quantity matters. Wonder clips, or the countless compatible knockoffs that have flooded the market and perform virtually identically, are small plastic clips with a flat base and a built-in measurement guide. They were designed for quilting and binding, but they've been adopted by every discipline that involves holding multiple layers together. Bag making, leather work, vinyl projects, canvas work, working with thick fabrics like denim or interfaced cotton. Here's why they save time specifically. On leather and vinyl, you cannot use pins. Every pinhole is permanent. On thick fabrics, pins bend or fail to hold multiple layers accurately. And on slippery fabrics, pins distort the weave. Wonder clips solve all three problems simultaneously. The flat base also means the fabric feeds into the sewing machine smoothly. One pack of 50 runs under $20. You need at least 50 because running out mid-project is exactly the moment you don't have time to stop and rummage through your notions box. Tool number four, a seam ripper with a thread catcher on the other end. Every sewer has a seam ripper. Most sewers have a cheap basic seam ripper with a handle on one end, and that's it. But the version with a thread eraser or fabric brush on the opposite end, which sweeps away the tiny thread fragments that remain after you've ripped a seam, eliminates an entire step from your workflow. Instead of rip, then pick, then brush, then get the tape roller, it's just rip, then sweep. That step might seem small. Add it up across an entire project with multiple corrections, and it's not small at all. The Clover Quick Locking Seam Ripper is widely trusted in the professional sewing community for its ergonomic grip and blade sharpness, which matters because a dull seam ripper drags and frays fabric rather than cutting cleanly through the thread. Tool number five, a magnetic pin dish, the Grab-It or equivalent. You know what a pin cushion is. You probably have the classic tomato-shaped one. What you might not have is a strong magnetic pin dish, the kind where you can literally toss a handful of pins at it from a short distance and they snap onto the surface. The Grab-It is the most recognized version. It's described by experienced quilters as being practically indestructible, and the strong magnet means you can retrieve pins from almost any surface, your mat, your table, your floor if you drop them, with a single swipe. How does this save time? Because the act of placing pins one by one into a traditional pin cushion is slow, and finding dropped pins, which happens constantly, is even slower. A magnetic dish makes pin management instant. Grab a handful, pull one out, put it back, all fluid, all fast. This might be the cheapest tool on this entire list in relation to the time it saves. Tool number six, Sew tights, magnetic sewing pins. Moving from the magnetic dish to magnetic pins themselves, sew tights are small flat magnets that you use to pin fabric layers by placing one magnet on top of your fabric and holding it there with a corresponding magnet underneath the fabric. The magnetic force holds the layers together without penetrating the material at all. This is genuinely useful for machine embroidery, where hooping can be awkward and traditional pins interfere with the hoop. It's also invaluable for English paper piecing, where you're holding small pieces, for bag handles that need to stay aligned while you sew, and for loading quilts on long arms, where the absence of penetrating pins means no fabric drag. Sew tights are a patented design, available on Amazon. Tool number 7, the Clover Ultimate Needle Threader, the desktop version. Threading a hand-sewing needle takes a perfectly healthy person 10 to 30 seconds every single time. For older makers or those with reduced vision, it takes significantly longer. The Clover Desktop Needle Threader has a push-button action. You insert the needle, push the button, and the thread is through. Built-in thread cutter included. It works with most standard hand-sewing needle sizes. The thing that makes the desktop version specifically worth it over the little wire loop threaders is the one-handed action. You're not threading by feel or alignment, you're just pushing a button. Over the course of an embroidery project, a quilting session, or a day of hand sewing, threading needles is a surprisingly large cumulative time drain. This eliminates it almost entirely. Tool number 8, a bone folder. A bone folder is a dull, smooth-bladed tool traditionally made from actual bone, now commonly from Teflon or high-density plastic, used to create crisp, clean fold lines in paper, cardstock, leather, and vellum without cutting or tearing. If you make cards, gift boxes, book covers, envelopes, origami, or any kind of paper construction, you already know what a bad fold looks like: rough, crushed, inconsistent. A bone folder compresses the paper fibers cleanly along a score line and produces a flat, sharp edge that looks completely professional. The Teflon version has the additional benefit of burnishing without scoring. You can use it to smooth down adhesive-backed vinyl, eliminate air bubbles under applied materials, and close packaged edges firmly. It costs almost nothing, and it's something paper and leather crafters reach for constantly once they have it. Tool number 9, a scoring board for paper crafts. The bone folder pairs with this. A scoring board is a ruled grid with channels cut into it at specific intervals, designed so that when you press a stylus or bone folder along a channel, you get a perfectly consistent score line on your cardstock or paper. Without one, measuring and marking each score line individually, then scoring freehand, requires many steps. With one, you measure once, set your paper against the guide, and the channel does the work. For card makers and paper crafters running any kind of volume, whether for personal projects or to sell, a scoring board reduces the time to prepare a card base from a multi-step measuring and marking process to about 10 seconds. The We Are Memory Keepers and Crafter's Companion versions are both well regarded and widely used. It's one of those tools that card makers consistently say they wish they discovered earlier. Tool number 10, a self-healing rotating cutting mat, the small version, for precision work. I already talked about the large rotating mat for fabric cutting. I want to specifically mention the small rotating cutting mat for a different application, working with polymer clay, leather, small pattern pieces, and resin work. When you're cutting around small, intricate shapes, the ability to rotate the material to your cutting hand rather than awkwardly steering the blade around curves saves significant time and produces cleaner edges. Small rotating mats are also used extensively by leather workers and by people doing detailed fussy cutting for paper crafts, where every cut needs to follow a curve or a tight corner. Olfa makes one, and Fiskars has a comparable version. Under $30, and they pay for themselves immediately if precision cutting is part of your regular workflow. Tool number 11, a digital caliper. If you work in resin, leather, woodworking, jewelry, ceramics, or any discipline where fit and dimension matter, a digital caliper is not optional. It's the tool that separates consistent professional results from frustrating hit-and-miss outcomes. A digital caliper reads measurements to 0.01 millimeters and displays them instantly. You can measure the internal diameter of a bezel to see if a stone will fit. You can verify the thickness of a leather edge before tooling. You can check whether two cast resin pieces are identical. You can confirm a wire gauge before purchasing. The iGaging and Nico brands make widely used affordable models in the $15 to $30 range that are accurate and durable for studio use. What saves the time is this: you stop making and remaking pieces based on eye judgment. You measure, you know, you proceed. The version with a zeroing function is particularly useful for comparing parts. Set your reference piece, then every measurement you take is relative to it. Tool number 12, a vacuum chamber and pump for resin work. This one is for anyone doing silicone mold making. Here's the critical distinction that confuses a lot of crafters. A vacuum chamber is specifically for degassing silicone mold rubber, not for casting clear resin. When you mix silicone, air bubbles are incorporated into the material. Placing your mixed silicone in a vacuum chamber and pulling a vacuum draws those bubbles out before the silicone cures, giving you a mold with a smooth, void-free surface that reproduces detail perfectly. Without degassing, those bubbles become defects in every piece you cast from that mold forever. For casting clear resin bubble-free, you actually need a pressure pot, not a vacuum chamber, which compresses any remaining microbubbles down to an invisible size as the resin cures. The BAOCENG 3-gallon kit with its 3.6 CFM pump is widely used and reviewed in the maker community for both applications. The Vivor acrylic versions are popular for hobbyists because the transparent wall lets you watch the degassing process. Knowing which one you need for which process is as important as having the tool. Tool number 13, a light box or LED tracing pad. A thin backlit LED panel, typically A4 or A3 size, makes tracing and pattern transfer from one surface to another fast and precise. If you're tracing embroidery patterns onto fabric, transferring designs to leather, aligning multiple layers of a project to check registration, or doing any kind of hand lettering or illustration where you want to trace a reference sketch cleanly, a light box eliminates the need to hold paper up to a window or guess at alignment. Modern craft light boxes are ultra thin. Some are less than 4 millimeters thick, and dimmable, which matters when you're working with different paper weights and opacity levels. For vinyl work, they're particularly useful for weeding intricate cuts because the backlighting makes it immediately obvious which pieces should be removed. Hion and AGPTE Tech make widely reviewed craft-specific models in the $20 to $40 range. This is one of those tools that sounds like a luxury until you use it, and then you can't imagine working without it. Tool number 14, a Teflon pressing sheet. If you use an iron for any craft work, applying fusible webbing, pressing seams, using heat transfer vinyl, doing batik or fabric dyeing, a Teflon pressing sheet is non-negotiable. It's a thin, non-stick sheet that sits between your iron and your work, protecting both the iron sole plate and your project from adhesive transfer, scorching, and melted material. More importantly, for production speed, with a Teflon sheet, you can move faster. You can press right up to and even over adhesive areas without stopping to check whether something is going to stick to your iron. You can do multiple press applications in rapid succession without having to clean your iron between each one. A Teflon pressing sheet costs under $10. The time and material it saves by preventing a ruined project pays for itself the first time you use it. Tool number 15, a beeswax thread conditioner. This one is extremely specific and extremely useful for hand sewers, hand quilters, leather workers who do saddle stitching, and embroiderers. Running your thread through a block of beeswax before you sew does two things. It reduces friction as the thread passes through fabric, which means it pulls through faster and with less hand fatigue, and it coats the thread fibers so they resist tangling, fraying, and knotting while you work. Thread Heaven was the synthetic conditioner for decades, but it was discontinued. Beeswax is the original alternative, and for most hand sewing applications, it works better anyway, particularly for thread going through leather or thick canvas where synthetic conditioners don't penetrate as well. A single block of beeswax lasts for years and costs a few dollars. If you do any significant hand sewing and you're not conditioning your thread, you are fighting your materials unnecessarily. Tool number 16, a heat-resistant silicone work mat. Not just any work mat, a properly heat-resistant silicone mat rated for temperatures that your tools actually reach. The distinction matters because craft supply stores sell mats at widely varying quality levels, and a mat that claims to be heat-resistant but warps, smells, or releases compounds at iron temperature is a problem, not a solution. What a good silicone mat does for speed, it's non-stick, so resin, glue, wax, and adhesives peel right off. It's heat resistant, so you can put a hot glue gun directly on it, use it under your heat gun, and press fabric directly on it. It's chemical resistant, so you can clean it with isopropyl alcohol without degrading the surface. And because it protects your actual work surface from all of these hazards simultaneously, you don't have to manage a series of separate protective layers for different tasks. One mat, everything underneath it is safe. Tool number 17, a bead spinner. If you work with seed beads in embroidery and jewelry making and wire work, you know that picking up individual tiny beads one by one with a needle is one of the most tedious, time-consuming tasks in any craft. A bead spinner changes this completely. It's a small bowl on a motorized or hand-cranked spindle. You fill the bowl with beads, and when it spins, the curved needle scoops up multiple beads in sequence from the bowl's edge automatically. You can string dozens of seed beads per minute with a bead spinner versus a few minutes by hand. Electric bead spinners are available for around $20 to $30 from brands like Bead Buddy and comparable options on Amazon. If you string beads in any quantity, the time savings is not modest, it's transformative. What used to take an hour takes minutes. The bowl size limits what bead sizes work well. Most spinners work best with size 8 to size 11 seed beads. Tool number 18, a craft turntable or Lazy Susan. I want to specifically call out the heavy-duty, smooth-bearing craft turntable as distinct from a kitchen Lazy Susan. A proper craft turntable, one with a sealed bearing mechanism that spins smoothly and stays level, is essential for anyone who paints, glazes, decorates, or finishes three-dimensional objects. Pottery painters, candle decorators, resin tumblers, wood painters, ceramicists, anyone who needs access to all sides of an object without picking it up constantly. The difference between a turntable that spins smoothly and one that catches and wobbles mid-rotation is the difference between clean, even decoration and jerky, uneven application. IKEA Snuda is a commonly used and reliable option at a low price point. Specialty pottery turntable brands like Brent and Shimpo offer higher precision models for serious studio use. Whatever object you're finishing, being able to rotate it with a single finger while your other hand applies paint, wax, or sealant is fundamentally faster than repositioning the object repeatedly. Tool number 19, the speed weave or darning loom. This might be the most specialized tool on the list and therefore the one most worth including for the makers who need it. A speed weave is a small handheld darning loom that stretches warp threads over a damaged section of fabric, allowing you to weave and repair directly into the weave structure of the original cloth in minutes. It was popular from the 1930s onwards and has had a genuine revival in sustainable fashion in textile repair communities. For anyone doing visible mending, clothing repair, or upcycled textile work, the speed weave transforms a 30 to 60 minute hand darning job into a 5 to 10 minute task. It's also significantly easier to learn than traditional darning on a mushroom. Original vintage speed weaves appear on eBay and Etsy. Quality reproduction versions are made by German and UK craft suppliers. It's a niche tool for a specific need, but for the makers who work in textile repair or sustainable fashion, it's the most time-saving tool they own. Tool number 21, a point turner. Sewing and bag making involves turning corners right side out on bags, cushions, doll clothing, pockets, collar points, cuff edges. The professional way to get a crisp, sharp corner when turning a sewn piece right side out is with a point turner, a smooth, tapered tool that you push gently into the corner from inside the piece to push the corner fully out without risking poking through the stitching. Most sewers start out using a pencil, chopstick, or knitting needle for this job. The problem is that these tools have no built-in safety margin. They push through fabric if you apply too much pressure. A dedicated point turner like the Dritz or Clover versions has a rounded tip that distributes pressure, plus a scored edge on the opposite end that doubles as a seam creasing tool when pressing. The combination means you turn and press in one step rather than two. Small, cheap, and reaches for itself every time you sew anything with a corner. Tool number 21, a bias tape maker. Bias tape, the folded fabric strips used for binding edges on quilts, garments, and bags, is one of those things that sounds simple and looks simple, but takes forever to prepare by hand if you're cutting and folding it yourself. A bias tape maker is a small metal funnel-shaped tool that guides your fabric strip through a channel that folds both edges to the center automatically as you pull the fabric through and press it with your iron directly behind the tool. Clover makes bias tape makers in multiple widths: 6mm, 12mm, 18mm, and 25mm, each one corresponding to the size of finished tape it produces. What used to take 20 to 30 minutes of folding and pressing each strip becomes about 3 minutes. For anyone making quilts or garments that require binding, especially in volume, this tool pays for itself on the first project. It costs under $10 per size. Tool number 22, a loop turner or tube turner. This is the tool for turning narrow sewn tubes of fabric right side out. Bag straps, spaghetti straps, drawstring channels, fabric-covered buttons, fabric beads. Without a proper tube turner, turning a narrow tube is one of the most frustrating tasks in sewing. You're wrestling with fabric that won't cooperate, risking tearing the seam, spending 10 to 15 minutes per strap in some cases. A tube turner, specifically the Dritz loop turner, which has a latch hook at one end, goes into the tube from one end, latches onto the fabric at the opposite end, and pulls the tube inside out by drawing the tail back through the center in about 20 to 30 seconds. For bag makers specifically, this is one of those tools that removes a genuine bottleneck in production. If you make bags and you don't own a tube turner, you will order one immediately after reading this. Tool number 23, heat-resistant gloves for the craft studio. Not oven mitts, specifically silicone heat-resistant gloves designed for studio use, thin enough to maintain dexterity while protecting against burns from heat guns, irons, hot glue, torch work, and the outside of kilns. These are widely used by candle makers, soap makers, resin crafters, jewelry makers, and anyone working with flame work or heat pressing. The time-saving aspect is counterintuitive but real. When you are not afraid to be burned, you move faster. You pick things up while they're still warm. You manipulate hot materials more confidently. You don't pause and wait for things to cool to a safe touch temperature before continuing your process. A set of heat-resistant gloves with a silicone grip surface runs $15 to $25. For candle makers and soap makers pouring hot materials regularly, this is near essential studio safety gear that also actively speeds up your process. Tool number 24, a mini detail heat gun. A full-size heat gun operates at around 750 to 1500 degrees Fahrenheit and produces a wide, powerful airflow. For most detail work in crafting, popping bubbles and resin, drying ink for embossing, setting paint on fabric, activating shrink film, encouraging wax flow in batik, that much power is too much. It blows material around, it overheats small surfaces, it's hard to control. A mini detail heat gun, the Wagner Spraytech HT400 and embossed versions are well-reviewed craft-specific models, operate at lower, more controlled temperatures with a concentrated nozzle. For paper embossing specifically, having the right temperature and airflow means the embossing powder melts evenly and completely in one pass without scorching. For resin surface work, the lower temperature moves surface bubbles without accelerating the cure too aggressively. The right tool for the scale of the task saves both time and ruined work. Tool number 25, a chalk marking wheel or tracing wheel. If you cut fabric from commercial sewing patterns, you're familiar with the challenge of transferring pattern markings, dart lines, pocket positions, notches, center lines, from your paper pattern to your fabric. The traditional method of marking these individually with a marking pan or chalk is slow and often inaccurate when you're working through several layers. A tracing wheel with dressmaker's tracing paper, a type of carbon transfer paper designed specifically for fabric, lets you roll over all your marking lines simultaneously, transferring them through multiple layers of fabric at once. The Dritz tracing wheel with the serrated edge is the standard version for most fabrics. The smooth edge version works better on delicate fabrics where you don't want to stress the threads. This workflow, lay tracing paper, roll wheel, and done, replaces what would otherwise be a painstaking mark-by-mark process. Tool number 26, a sleeve board, mini ironing board. A sleeve board is a small double-ended ironing board shaped specifically for pressing tubular sections of fabric, sleeves, trouser legs, bag straps, narrow hems, without creating unwanted crease lines on the opposite side. On a regular ironing board, pressing a sleeve means you're ironing on a flat surface, which inevitably presses the back of the sleeve flat against itself and creates an off-grain crease unless you're very careful. A sleeve board goes inside the tube. You press on the top, the curve of the board prevents any fabric-to-fabric contact on the opposite side. For garment makers, this takes a task that requires constant repositioning, stuffing, and checking for unwanted creases and makes it a direct, confident pressing operation. The Reliable Corporation and Household Essentials both make compact sleeve board versions that don't take much storage space and are worth having even if you press garments only occasionally. Tool number 27, a lacing needle or leather stitching owls for leather workers. In leather work, the pricking iron, the serrated tool used to punch uniform, equally spaced stitch holes through leather before hand stitching, is the tool that determines the entire quality of the seam. But it's the accessories that save time. A good stitching owl with a wooden handle and interchangeable blades versus a basic owl. And specifically a hollow lacing needle, which threads leather lace through the needle cavity rather than requiring you to thread a conventional needle eye. For leather workers doing any kind of stitched edge or lacing, these distinctions matter because the setup and threading time on leather work is proportionally very high. An owl that stays sharp, a needle that threads instantly, and a pricking iron that spaces holes consistently on a first pass rather than requiring correction, all of these collapse the time between cut leather and finished product significantly. Tool number 28, a stamp platform or stamping tool for paper crafts. Anyone who does paper stamping knows the frustration of misaligned impressions. You press, you lift, and the image is either off-center, double stamped from a slip, or inconsistent in inking. A stamp platform solves this entirely. It's a hinged base where you mount your stamp on the lid and your paper or card on the base. When you close the platform, the stamp contacts the paper in a perfectly repeatable, consistent position every single time. The MISTI, the most incredible stamp tool invented, is the most well-known and widely loved version in the card-making community. It allows you to close it, check the impression through the transparent lid, re-ink, and stamp again in exactly the same position if the first impression wasn't dark enough. This eliminates the single most common source of waste and frustration in paper stamping. For card makers doing batch work, a stamp platform enables batch stamping multiple cards identically in sequence, which dramatically speeds up production. Tool number 30, an ergonomic weaving sword or shed stick for weavers. Weaving involves moving the shuttle through the shed, the opening between raised and lowered warp threads, on every single pass. The shed stick or weaving sword is a flat, polished stick that maintains that opening so the shuttle passes through cleanly without catching on individual threads, which is the main source of error and slowdown in hand weaving, especially on tight warps. A good weaving sword, smooth-edged, properly dimensioned for your loom's width, made from polished hardwood or acrylic that glides with no friction, means fewer catches, fewer thread breaks, faster shuttle passes, and dramatically fewer errors to fix. A poor quality or improvised shed stick means constant thread catches that stop your rhythm and require individual correction. For weavers doing any production volume, the quality of this one tool affects the overall speed of every project they make. Tool number 30, a portable rechargeable UV lamp for resin jewelers. I've saved this one for last because it specifically applies to the jewelers and resin artists who work with UV Cure resin and haven't yet made the upgrade from a basic nail lamp to a portable rechargeable model. The difference in workflow is significant. A portable rechargeable UV lamp, the Sun UV Sun 4S and comparable 48-watt models are widely used, means you cure pieces on your work surface without having to carry them to a fixed lamp, meaning you can UV cure small adjustments in detail work in position without disrupting a partially assembled piece. For resin jewelers doing detail work, adding a final clear layer over an inclusion, sealing a crack in a bezel fill, hardening a UV adhesive join before continuing, the ability to cure in place rather than transport saves handling time and prevents the tiny displacements that happen when you pick up an uncured piece. Rechargeable models also free you from cord management, which is a genuine workflow benefit in a busy studio.